All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this live digital panel. Today we're focusing on the topics of budgeting, incentive planning within your restaurant. My name is Dan Jacobs, and I direct our partnerships and acquisition efforts here at RSI. And super stoked because we have a great panel today that I'm excited to introduce you to shortly here. First, just to cover a couple basics, we will look to take a few questions towards the end of the panel, so stay tuned in. And you can submit those questions via the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, so go ahead and pull that up if you want. We certainly prefer taking questions through that Q&A versus the chat utility. It's just easier on me and my Time Life headset to see all the questions come into one place. Other than that, let's get moving into the intros. We have a short amount of time and a great amount of content. So our first panelist, Ryan Rose. You know, wave to the, there you are, man.
Out of California. Hope to give you some type of nugget today.
Oh, absolutely. So Ryan, you began at Zocalo, about 14 years ago now, and just steadily worked your way up the ranks to now being the executive chef at Zocalo. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, turn of this year, I just became the president. So I've gone through every level, which has been pretty amazing. It was first job out of college. So to tell parents that you're going to be a bar back out of college is typically not what they want to hear, but 15 years later, here we are.
Dude, congratulations and great effort.
Thanks.
You know, something else that I wanted to point out is that Ryan and the leadership team at Zocalo also devote, their time and talent and money to the community. They're outside of Sacramento, as well as including an annual fundraising event that generates over $100,000 for low-income housing in Mexico. So, Ryan, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Our second panelist, David Miller, who is a partner at the Kickin Chicken Restaurant Group out of the Charleston, South Carolina area. I love that town, David. Thank you for joining us today.
Great to be here.
It is the gym, that's for sure. So Kickin Chicken, for those of you who don't know, they serve up really high-quality wings, chicken tenders, and a whole lot more that comes along with the hospitality that Charleston's known for. And, David's background includes a tremendous amount of leadership roles in operations, franchising, and finance. I try not to date how many years, David. I'll let you bring that up if you want to. But you, yeah, I'm biting my tongue right now.
That's fine. That's fine.
No, you've been on restaurant leadership. The president of the restaurant board there in South Carolina. You've put another tremendous amount of volunteer time in places, and also Kickin Chicken is another great supporter in the community. I think I saw on your notes there you've provided over 4,000 meals for teachers over the past 5 years, which is phenomenal, as well as raising over $70,000 for Camp Happy Days, whose mission is to kind of offer support and encouragement to children diagnosed with cancer and their families. So what a great story to have you two gentlemen here today, and I can't say thank you enough, David, for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be here. That's the common thread of us restaurateurs. We know how to give back a lot of times through fellowship, and when you got food, it's easier than money. So
I agree with that.
I like it. It's also my pleasure to introduce our two co-hosts today, Michelle O'Neill and David Downs. They are from our client advisor team here at RSI, and Michelle and Dave work with a variety of RSI clients all across the country on topics such as goal setting, management mentoring, budgeting, and other CFO and COO type projects. Their experience provides such a great perspective into what strategies can be employed to really further growth in the restaurant community. So for anyone listening today, I highly recommend you reach out to them if there's something you're working on in your restaurant. I do see Michelle's having a couple difficulties with the Wi-Fi's and the 4Gs and the LTEs, but hopefully we'll get her back. And with that, Dave, I'll kick it over to you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. I'm going to take the first question and kick it David Miller's way from Kickin Chicken. Talk us through a little bit about when you and your organization, David, start that budgeting process and approximately how long it takes to get completed for the upcoming calendar year. When do you guys start?
Well, we start a little bit earlier. We start in the late summer, early fall. We want to stage it. We're restaurateurs. Our management team is involved from beginning to end in the budgeting process. So we'll stage it. We begin in the early fall. We set the calendar. We'll do year-to-date sales comparisons over the last few years and look at our sales trends. And so the month of September is really concentrating on what our sales going to look like, and that's a critical piece. We then just kind of jump right into COGS and labor, and so we're going to figure out our prime costs. Labor takes a tremendous amount of time, so we're usually getting that in October. Simultaneously, or running in November, we'll just kind of work on our fixed costs and our other operating costs. And again, half of that is done by the restaurants, and fixed costs are done by our office support team. And as we go along the way, we might amend something. We might amend our sales trends or our labor trends or what have you. And by late November, we're updating, we're tightening it up, and we approve everything through period 12 right before Christmas, and then come back at 13, do period 13 at close 13. So it sounds like a lot of work and a tedious process, but really what we're doing is giving everybody a bunch of small chunks at a time, because it's critical for our restaurant managers and the teams to be part of that process.
We'll talk a little bit more today, too, on a few of those things that you touched on, the labor piece and how to best do that, the sales projections and how to best get those set out for the upcoming timeframes. We're going to talk a little bit more, too, about what the budget means for your organization and how you use that in a strategic way. We're going to kind of dive into a little bit more of those subjects, so I'm glad you brought those up in the first question. Ryan, for Zocalo, when did you guys start that budgeting process, and about how long did it take you to get from start to finish through the 2019 annual budget?
We're on the same page there. We're starting the year before, September, October, giving it a good look. And the way we set up is once we kind of have that overall budget set, we'll then go into the areas that we want to mix it up a little bit. And if we're looking to, whether it's add a product onto the menu or we're looking to target a certain area, whether it be a revenue center at the bar or patio. So we'll create the whole budget, but then we take the first period of the year and hone in on about 3 or 4 line items, and really just, we're just adding major fuel to the fire to see if we can make some adjustments and make some change happen in some target areas. So I think overall we're getting that main picture of what our budget's going to look like. We are definitely not futurists. We can't foretell the future, so we don't know. We're constantly checking in, but most importantly, we dive into about 3 to 4 items per quarter and really try to make something happen inside those numbers so we get our focus.
Gotcha. And so you're kind of taking that into small chunks at a time, and that's perfect. What one of the things I think that so many restaurant operators specifically, especially folks that kind of come from other industries, maybe as they're entering into restaurants, they look at that budgeting process as throwing darts at a board in a lot of ways. David, how does somebody get better at budgeting? Outside of the quick answer, just do more of it, right? How do you get better and better at budgeting?
Well, our management team they're heavily involved in the financials on a weekly basis and on a period basis. So, we're always talking about the trends, the sales trends. We're always talking about the product mixes, and certainly in these days and time, we're always talking about labor and the labor pool and the amount of turnover. So it's just kind of mixed into that conversation. So it's just an offshoot of that conversation that we have continuously.
Awesome. Ryan, how have you gotten better at budgeting over the years? And I know you've had kind of a rise through the ranks. What have you learned along the way that's made you better at budgeting in that process?
You got to care. It's not good enough. We're in a place where you could hit the budget and I'm not happy. We just kind of look at it as a target, and in a competitive nature, we're always going, yeah, but that's not good enough. So next year, let's tweak it up a little bit more. So I think that our kind of overall idea is just simply we're constantly trying to get better. And just because we might have hit a number, didn't, or killed it, just gives us an idea of what different moves we can make to continue to adjust, because it never ends. It just never ends.
Got it. One of the things, and I don't know if Dan mentioned these in the intros. David, you guys, Kickin Chicken's up to 6 units now total, correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Perfect. Ryan, you're up at 3 units for Zocalo currently, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah.
Perfect. How does the budget change, or how does the budgeting process change if you find yourself with a restaurant that may be in even just slight decline in terms of top line sales? What kinds of things are you thinking about readjusting if you're seeing a little bit more saturation in the market and the restaurant sales are in decline? What are you focused on in that time?
David?
Ryan, you want to take that?
I'll take your lead.
Okay. Well,
you got 6. You got 6. So I want to hear your answer.
Well, the budget is a living document. It has to be. We get it done, and we get it done in January, and then send it over to the bank. Okay, and so but after that, it becomes a living document, and we are committed to adjusting. We had a new restaurant that came online in September of last year, so we have no sales history. So we're just kind of in the off season in the winter, how do we do this? And as recently as last week, at the end of period 1, the general manager and the director of ops came back and said we need to amend the budget to this, and they wanted to ratchet sales down, and I said, that makes a lot of sense. Make sure that the labor is proportionate, though. So
I want to interpret that. You say you create one for the bank and then you change everything? Is that what I heard?
No. Because we send our financials to the bank quite frequently, and they've got the budget comparison on the live sheet. So.
It's pretty cool. What does and David, you could chime in, but it obviously does help to have more units. There's more numbers to compare. So it is a opportunity to see last year same store, last year other store, new unit. What is the budget from last year? So there's a bunch of different numbers inside of there to find that number that you want to fall on for your budget for the following. But I will say this blows my mind. Our 2 oldest stores, so Midtown is turning 15 this year, and our Roseville location's about 30 minutes away, is turning 8. And there is a little under 1,000 square foot difference. The difference in 2018 yearly sales, $80,000 difference. You're talking, a semi-week of sales difference. So sometimes it just leads me to believe that the system that you're working dropped into a place, and you're making your adjustments inside there. But it told me something about the system that Zocalo and the things that we are doing on the back end, and kind of, again, just our values and our thought process on stuff. How it can be dropped into a place and how similar numbers were just blew my mind last year.
David, any similar stories from your side too?
Well, again, it just goes back to, demographics in Charleston's always changing. Charleston's booming. Charleston's a great restaurant town. So, you never know what's going to pop up next to you. So you just got to be acutely aware of what's going on and make those changes. I think Ryan and I are in total agreement on that. So we're not going to yell at each other about that.
Yeah, no, we won't. But I would say, even inside of that, I mean, competition is here in Sacramento. It was a great move. It happened a couple of years ago, but they dropped the Golden One Arena right downtown. It used to be outside of the city, and instantly you got every national chain trying to jump on the boat. And here's the young, here's the local guy still trying to make it happen. What I do think is that on the competition side, I do think that there are people that are just trying to get by and they're not putting in the extra work, such as working a budget. So being here in Sacramento, which is obviously in the capital of California, we are on the rise in minimum wage. We went from it going on an increase of 50 cents a year to now $1 jump a year until $15. We're at 12 now. That is over $100,000 hit to the bottom line per store. So if you want to see the negative effects of economies of scale, it would be in those types of things.
Yeah.
If you're not doing a budget, you're out. I mean, you're seeing it. It's the end of February, which I can't believe it's the end of February. Guys, they're going out. They are going out. Your food is not good enough. You don't look good enough. You didn't comb your hair enough to stay in business. You got to put in the time to make sure that this thing is going to pencil out and get a game plan, because if not, it's a bumpy ride.
I lost my co-host completely. Michelle O'Neill, unfortunately, was having so many technical issues. I'm going to try and run solo on this and do my best. So I'm sorry, David and Ryan, in advance for that. We're just having some technical backgrounds. Thanks again. One thing I wanted to jump to, and you kind of broke the yoke on it there, Ryan. Both of your markets are also seeing significant labor. David, maybe minimum wage isn't necessarily your issue, because most of your folks are not as many of your folks are making that base minimum wage, especially in the back of the house. Is that true?
Yeah, minimum wage is not the issue. We're competing for employees just as much as we're competing for guests, and so you have to provide a competitive wage. Much like Ryan does, we have some built-in automatic raises that are built into our, especially our back of the house employees.
Sure.
And so that's helpful. But we compete for these employees, and the wages are critical to that. The benefits are critical to that. So, we're in a fine dining town. Charleston is a highly fine dining town, and as you alluded to, I sell hand-breaded chicken tenders and wings, and we're a full-service restaurant. So, we're losing a lot of people to places that can go cook at that have a higher average ticket, and a little bit easier to conform in the back of the house. And we have to be critically aware of that, and that comes back in our budgeting. That comes back to we're calculating average wages, we're calculating overtime, and trying to move that dial a little bit.
Ryan, like I said, you kind of at least broke the yoke on the labor issue. And in California, it's totally different than South Carolina, even though they're kind of bi-coastal cities, fine dining town in some ways. Talk to me about what changed when you're looking at those budgets from year over year, last year to this year. What changed in your mind in terms of how you treat employees? What are you looking at, being a little bit more creative solution-wise? How did that labor market change what you're thinking, or maybe even long-term strategy looks like?
There's a lot of really good questions in there, and our internal customer is the most important thing. We protect it to the death, and because of external factors happening, which will never go away, by the way. Once we get to $15, it's going to be something else. And what we can't do is play the victim and complain about it. And we tend to want to just be proactive about it. We're not going to take away from our employee, and we're not going to take away from the customer. The typical first quick answer, because like David, they're not doing their plan in September and October. They're waiting till December 31st or January 2nd, is to increase price, or to cut service staff, because that works for my labor percentage. It just makes no sense to me. If it takes, I don't know, 10 servers to take care of the customers on a Friday night, why, when minimum wage goes up, do you think you can do it with 8? Like, at some point, the customer's going to be pissed. And at some point, that is downfall, that if you keep on making decisions because you are not taking care of the numbers on the back end, I don't want to even think about it for us. So what we're doing is we're looking at the stuff. We're looking for the people that want to be our partner, and we don't want anymore. We don't want partners. Towel guy, if you keep on charging me extra for the dirties because you said that I got it, I'm going to fire you. Like, that's not that important, right? So if you don't know that your linen company is charging you extra for added soils because you're not paying attention, and you think that to just cover that up, you're going to increase your menu cost, dude, I mean, I think it is a lazy answer, and typically the lazy answers over a long period of time don't work out all that well.
Ryan, you mentioned something really interesting there that I want to kick to David, and then I'll come back to you here in just a moment. The impacts on the guest and your team of how well you budget, or how good you are at budgeting. David, what are the impacts that you really consider in terms of your guest and your team, the folks that work with you and for you? What are the things that you most highly consider when you're writing that budget, and then how does that impact the guest on the other end? Talk me through that process and how that works for Kickin Chicken.
Well, we're a value-driven company, so we're a little bit reverse when the economy is going well. When the economy is going up, people are probably eating at a little bit higher end restaurant than the Kickin Chicken. So right now it's a tight market, but so we're all about value, and my formula for value is quality divided by the price. As Ryan has alluded to, there's a lot of people going out there and they're just raising prices, and that's our first course of action, and that can't be it. It's controlling our costs. Our mission statement for our budget this year is how to make more with the same or less. So we basically budgeted our flat. We're concentrating on 2 areas: turnover and hiring, and that's impacting our labor. The turnover, you just got to get that under control. And we actually had a 2-hour meeting yesterday with all the assistant managers in the system about hiring, making sure that we don't take shortcuts in this tight labor market, because average hire is going through training is going to cost you about $600. And if you go out and look at a piece of equipment, you're analyzing that. So I don't want to compare our employees to pieces of equipment, but you got to look at it as it's an investment. And so so it went back to the hiring process and making sure that we don't take the shortcuts and circumvent a 2-interview system, or making sure that we got the most experienced person in the world who's got, because they've got 14 restaurants under their belt over the last 2 years.
Right.
So that really comes back to that budgeting part of it. We budgeted this year an incentive, a bounty incentive, and I believe that for every employee somebody recommends and we hire, they're getting $250. Our concept started out as a delivery model, and we still deliver within our operations. And so delivery drivers, because of Uber and everything, we're up bounty systems of $400. And that's certainly budgeted in and impacts it. You show me a well-trained, well-staffed restaurant, and I'm going to show you a very profitable restaurant who's hitting their budgets and getting bonuses as a result of it.
Yeah. We'll get to incentive plans here pretty shortly. Ryan, I want to kick that one to you too. And you mentioned the pricing. Now, you kind of went the other way when we did our initial talk a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
You kind of went the other way when you're looking at to-go menu pricing or lunch menu pricing. It was to-go menu. Sorry, the to-go menu pricing. You kind of went the other way and were creative in being able to find solutions to stay competitive with the lunch market. Talk us through that process.
Yeah, you can, if you were to Google the concessions of the last Super Bowl that just happened a handful of weeks back, what hit the news is that they decided to not increase and inflate prices just because the game was at their arena. So it happened in Atlanta, and they kept the hot dog at $2 and the beer at $4. One of my really good friends who is a Rams fan from here shot down there to check out the game. He said it was an incredible experience. So I'm telling him the story. I said, dude, did you happen to see the pricing at the concession stands? He goes, I couldn't believe it. He goes, I had like 10 beers because they were only $4. So
that's my kind of guy, yeah.
What we read, he truly experienced. And guess what? Instead of having 2 beers because they inflated the price to $15, he had 10, right? So now, did he not only have an awesome time? The guy had a lifetime experience. He got to see his team in the Super Bowl. He flies down to Atlanta. But the thing that he was the most blown away by was the $4 beer. So we have a very similar approach in what we're doing with takeout. It seems like David has a phenomenal outlook on delivery and what's happening outside of your space, and we're getting into that as well. So we're full service. We've always had takeout, but we completely switched the model. We've had some things that we have kept since 2009 recession times, and over the course of the years, they call this in the technical. Your IT guy might call it legacy. And legacy are the things that are there. No one has any idea what it's there for. It just was there, and you forget about them. And when we looked at our packaging of our takeout, we said that is absolutely horrible. And we try to. We don't try. What we focus on is who we believe our brand is, and we believe it looks like a black BMW. And our packaging was not black BMW. And we took a look into that, and we said, we need to fix some things here because that's just not who we are. I understand that we made that decision to take care of recession, but we're not in recession right now. And let's put some effort into this thing. We changed up our pricing model so that, we're a Mexican restaurant. So every time you go into a Mexican restaurant, what do you get?
Chips and salsa.
You get chips and salsa. So we broke all that out, and we're more where you're adding it. It's a value meal. So you can get the entree, because now we are able to bring the price down, the perception of the price there as well. And if you want the chips and salsa, and if you want the beans and rice, then it's an additional. But now, at least in the pricing model for the takeout, which is outside, so you're not getting our service, you're not getting the ambiance, you're not getting the look of being inside our restaurant, we're able to compete with other takeout services, and they're on our block. And to think that someone wants to go for $20 just because that's Zocalo's meal, it's just stupid of us to think that that's okay, and that's why we switched it up.
We're nearly halfway into this digital panel. I want to shift gears just a little bit. We're going to kick it back to the incentive planning. And for me, budgets and incentives go really, incentive planning or incentivizing management goes really hand in hand together. Here's what's expected in terms of what we committed to do to each other or for each other via the budget. Here's what it means for you and for your financial growth. David, let's talk a little bit about how your incentive plan works, how the management gets bought into the program, and then Ryan, we're going to come back to you with a similar question after this.
Well, our incentive plan is it's pretty simple. The restaurants and the key hourly employees receive a flat dollar amount if they hit their budget on a quarterly basis. And then they receive 10 cents on the dollar for every dollar we exceed budget. You can't. I mentioned earlier that they're part of the process, and they've got skin in the game. I want them to have some ownership. So I want them to experience some of those rewards once they hit it. Now, if they don't hit it, and if they don't hit it, and then we're talking about is it because the budget needs to be adjusted? Are we not following some of the human behaviors that get us there to do it? And we have those we have those conversations. I often threaten the general manager when he doesn't hit his budget, when I feel like he should or she should, to bring their spouse in and have a conversation and say, hey, your spouse $1,000 on the table, and their food cost.
I love it.
Had you dinette set or what have you. And then we do include some of our key employees, our trainers and what have you, because we want them to feel some ownership of this. And it seems we've often looked at it to change it, but it just seems to be that they have to understand the incentive plan. They've got to be able to recite it. So it's pretty straightforward and easy. And they know if they're doing their job, they know what they have to do on a weekly basis to hit these marks.
That's great. Ryan, you guys take a little bit different approach, right? If I remember correctly, you're not necessarily incentivizing or doing major bonuses for budget-driven purposes. Talk us through how that affects things on your side. What does that do to your compensation? How do you work with the employee longevity? How do you keep them engaged in the process?
We on our management level, we are looking for people. We are looking for people that want to win, and we want to look for people that want to be better, and people that are wanting to give to a purpose. And for us, what it's the way that we get into management is to see some qualities in you to just want to do great work. And with that, for as maybe I don't know, inflated as it might sound, it has proven itself in a few different ways. So what I'm getting at is we don't bonus. We do bonus, but it's not based off of hitting goals or any budgets. We are using our numbers and our budgets as to me, we're a basketball team, and we have stats. And you want to have more assists or you want to have more rebounds, and we're going to keep on coaching through to get you there because that's what you really want to do. And really, the ultimate goal for us is that we stay in business for a really long time, and you have security that here you're good, and that here you have family, and that here you can stay here for as ever long as you want to. Now, it does not work for everybody, and there are some people that need that extrinsic push to because that's what drives them, and that is completely okay. It just might not work out, and I'm very upfront with anyone that wants to get into management that this is the system. We bonus, and if there is a pot at the end, trust me, Christmas is going to be good. Don't expect it, because as you continue to give a bonus, I don't know, $10,000 at the end of the year. Well, guess what? Next year, if you don't get the $10,000, then I tend to think that might actually deflate motivation. And I prefer to pay well and not do bonus. Now, inside of that, if you can continuously show that what you're doing is becoming a great NBA All-Star, then you have the opportunity through your goals to come to any of us and go, look, I think I deserve a raise. And here's my numbers to prove it. So really what the structure that we have here is an opportunity for you to use the goals that you have hit over a course of time, prove to us that you deserve to be paid more. And that's how we tend to work our system.
David, for what's a stretch goal versus what's attainable, how do you ascertain the difference between the two when you're in that budgeting process? This is a stretch. Where does that cut off? How do you reach that breaking point where it becomes unattainable?
You have a debate. Yeah, sometimes I'm having a debate between.
Sure.
That's really good.
My knowledge of where the chicken market's going to go in 2019 versus where my director of operation or my general manager, where it's going to go. You're going to have those conversations. I yield a little bit, not always, but I yield to those who come prepared to those debates. If you've done your homework and you know, and so maybe the compromise is going. I think we're percentage off on food cost or what have you. We may, you can't just write a budget and it's automatically going to appear. It's got to be a reasonable expectation. And it's, I look at it like a box, and you're inside the box. You're not outside the box on a budget. You're inside, and you're just kind of tapping the parameters and kind of stretching the box. And so that's where we have those conversations. More times than not, I win the debate, not because
I was going to ask that, yeah.
But because my 35 years of restaurant experience kind of wins. And so, but I do believe that, if they walk away from the conversation thinking it's not obtainable, they're not going to get it. I want to go back to Ryan's. One of the problems that we have had in the past, especially in the last year, the downside on the incentive program is, especially with if you make bonus 8 quarters in a row, it becomes expected. Mm-hmm. So when you get on the 9th one, you really have to discuss that. And there have been times in my previous life, I wouldn't say today, where I kind of yielded. Okay, I'll give it to you this time, but and there's a but in there. So you have to be cautious. The incentive has to be a motivational tool to dig in just a little bit deeper and harder. And I'll just kind of close this by nowhere in our incentive program. Again, the incentive program is not to take the place of any kind of performance raises or anything like that. It's just for meeting these parameters that we've set collectively.
One thing, and Michelle and I are both in the client advisory department, as Dan mentioned at the intro here. We've been writing a lot of budgets for folks that just needed a little additional push. Maybe it's their first one, or they've utilized one in years past and never really held true to it and didn't understand the importance of it in certain ways. So we've made that kind of nudge into getting them back into that program. And sometimes it's met with a little bit of resistance, and sometimes not really at all. They're really welcoming to that feedback. Ryan, I know something I would like to get a little bit more input on is how you factored in the compensation increase and budgeting, and how did you arrive at the numbers when you were going through that budgeting process? What was the way that you got to those ending numbers for the compensation and bonuses?
For compensation and bonuses, well, I'll say this. Is that one, if you do not have a client advisor, get one. The training team there is phenomenal, and we were able to start with Julie, who just was a savior for us, because when we first got into RSI, we had no idea what our numbers were, and the difference in the way that we're running in the 2 years that we have been with RSI is night and day. The second thing is basically Julie fired me, and she pushed me over to Sydney and that was another great move. So what ends up happening is that you have someone that you can, and I love the word that David used, is debate. And it doesn't mean that the client advisor knows everything just because that's what they do as numbers, but it gives you someone with a lot of knowledge to go back and forth and say what's right, what's wrong, and how do we get to an agreement, and then you got to take it, and then you got to debate it again, and then we got to work with it. Right? So typically at the it's just like our menu. We're looking at a market, and we are interested in what is going on, whether it be on the customer side or the internal side of where pay needs to be, where our menu pricing needs to be based off of what is going on in the market right now. Not only are we seeing the minimum wage increase, but it is a tight labor market in California. Sacramento is growing crazy. right now. And what that does is it is eating up resources. And, you know, the owner of Zocalo, Ernesto Jimenez, you know, Zocalo's 15 years old, but he's been in the game for 26 years. And he would slap me across the face if we were not taking care of our people. And there are people that are with us today that started with him 26 years ago, and it's because he has taken care of them. I go back to the word of security. People have raised their families. Kids are graduating college, moving out, doing their thing, creating their own families, and there's a story there. And the story is, here you're safe and you're amongst family members. Now, people don't want to work for free, right? And over the course of time, you're just watching what's going on, not only in the market, but also internally. And that's what helps us get to the numbers that we need to in compensation.
Awesome. Last question. Budgeting as it ties into, and then we'll jump into the questions and answers here in just a moment. David, I want to kind of make a correlation between a budget, which is an annual type of event, versus long-term strategy. And I want to kind of tie that in and see how those affect, the budgeting affects what's happening long-term. And how far out are you in your mind, at least in terms of long-term business strategy?
Well, you know, because there's so many impactful things that affect the budget that,
sure,
you know, especially sales in the labor market, it's hard to look at it 3, 4, 5 years out. What we will do is you know, we're a 21-year-old brand, you know, been very successful for 21 years, and so, you know, it needs to freshen up. So we start looking back at what Ryan said. You know, we'll start looking at, you know, our menu mix and how we want to kind of change that menu mix out. You know, we're 35% of our food sales are either takeout or delivery. And, you know,
wow.
and now with, you know, new local municipality paper constraints and disposable constraints, we have to kind of look at that. So we'll take a look more at how we want our takeout strategy and our delivery strategy to work. We'll take a longer look at how we, you know, the new ways to recruit, the different ways to recruit. And so, you know, it's really, and then we because we're fortunate enough to own our properties, you know, we take a longer look at our fixed costs and how those happen. We also, the last thing that we do is take a look at what we call our non-recurring expenses, you know, what kind of capital projects are we going to take on? When can we afford to do those? So, you know, outside of day-to-day operating parameters, we're always looking at those kind of things and how we kind of strategize those and build those in.
Cool. Good question we got from the general populace here. Do you share budgeted goals and how well you perform to those goals? Do you share any of that with hourly folks, the folks outside of maybe that salaried management team? Do you share any of that information with them?
I'll take the lead on that one. We'll share our costs. We'll share our costs. You know, we're going to be a little bit sensitive about the sales for security purposes, but we're going to share our costs. You know, it's the hourly people and their behaviors at work that kind of drive our costs. They'll drive our labor. They'll drive our costs of goods. They'll drive our repairs and maintenance. So we do communicate with the staff how we're doing against those in regular meetings. So I think it's important to keep everybody engaged. Certainly, you're going to get 80, 20, probably 20% who really care about it, and at least that's 20% more than you would have if you didn't share those kind of concerns.
Sure. Ryan, how about you?
That's a really good one. So I would say yes. And what we're doing is we have a system, we call them OKRs. It comes from Google, objectives and key results. And what happens is typically it's driving from the P&L unless it's something, maybe a product launch that we're looking to start out with. but that'll filter its way all the way through to, front of the house staff and as well as back of the house staff. So they themselves have goals that are tied to numbers that are coming from the P&L. And for them to understand why, right, they need to know. And, so we're targeting things that they have the most impressions on. Comps is a big one. So we're big time compers. Don't tell Sydney that we're big time compers. She will hit me up on that all day long. But we comp in a way where we're saying it's up to you. So we are looking for people to be themselves and to make decisions. Make the decision and make it in favor of the customer. And for someone who is directly talking to a customer, if they do not understand that there's transparency in what we're doing and how to make great decisions real time, don't go ask mommy and daddy, what am I supposed to do about a comp? If you feel that that's what you're supposed to do, then do it. I just want you to know that if you went this other way with that same experience, you might have been able to bring down the comp number, but at the same time, it's okay because you felt that at that time you were making the correct decision in favor of the customer.
Another question here from everyone kind of involved. There's two ways to kind of write a budget in my mind. Do you write it from the top down in terms of let's start with sales, or have you ever written a budget the opposite way? Start with profits at the bottom and fill in all the costs up above. Here's what I want to make out of this deal. David, how do you write your budgets? Top down or bottom up?
Can I say both?
Well, that means we're going to meet in the middle, I guess.
When was like I mentioned, that went online in September, and so we pretty much know the cost, and so we're gonna figure in the cost and say what does it take for this restaurant to break even. In the first couple of months is all about kind of breaking even and letting the dust settle in. So with new restaurants we go bottom up. While we're working on sales, we work simultaneously on a lot of different things. And so it is literally like putting a piece of, putting a puzzle together, and you're putting this in, and, when you're done, you look at your comparables, you look at last year, you look at last year's budget, you look at this and say, well, what piece is missing? And so then we go back and kind of tweak it. So I have to say it's a little bit of cost, but, even though it's the most speculative, it really starts with sales for us. You have to have a reasonable outlook on sales. A restaurant is flat, they're going to budget a 5% increase next year without any kind of justification. That's just not going to fly. So that's why I have to say both, because I'm looking at a 100-piece. We're looking at a 100-piece puzzle, and we're just trying to put it all together.
I love his answer. Because just because you write it on a budget doesn't mean that it's going to magically appear. And you got to go work. And what's really interesting with that is, and I take this back to talking about systems. And it's phenomenal, David, that you've been in business for so long. Congratulations. It is. There was in our last increase in pay, we started using hot schedules as our scheduling system. And inside the system does not know our budgets for our labor. What we did do is tell it, how many servers do you need for X amount of sales? How many cooks do you need for X amount of sales? How many hostess? At lunch, what is it? At dinner, what is it? At brunch, what is it? At happy hour, what is it? What is it on a Saturday? What is it on a Sunday? We broke down every single number that we could, which took a flight out to Denver to see RSI to make sure we were doing this thing right. We added in a position to the front of the house, did not tell the system what our percentage, our goals were, and we decreased front of the house labor percentage with an increase in minimum wage dollar pay by 1.5%. And if anything, what it can help tell you is sometimes you have to change the system first, because if you've been doing it for a long time and you keep doing that same system and it keeps producing the same number, well, guess what? You're going to get the same freaking result. So sometimes you got to get back in and go, wait a minute, man, we got to scale out. You're in the leaves right now. You got to see the forest. and really see what's going on, because you've had 15 external factors that have come to you, and you keep on using things that you did 15 years ago. That's why you're getting the number that you're getting. And sometimes when you understand that you need to change what you're doing, you'll see a difference in your numbers.
It's funny you bring that up. That's always how I've looked at the budget. There's one of two things that needs to be fixed. We either need to fix the budget or we need to fix what we're actually doing, right? And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be what we're actually doing in terms of how we're training people, how we're educating the staff, how we're teaching them about that stuff. It's exactly right, that fixing what you're actually doing. We are right at 50 minutes. I think there was one more question from the panel. I had it pulled up here a second ago. Let me pull that back up. I think this one David already kind of touched base on, and as far as I know, this would probably be one of the best places to start too. The question was, for a completely new restaurant, where do you look for a place to start on targets for the budget? Hopefully you at least have some ideas of food costing and pour costing, but that break-even point for top-line sales is usually the place to start. Would you agree, David? Ryan?
Right?
Would you agree that?
Well, I'll tell you this. We just opened up a restaurant a year ago. It just turned 1 year in January, and you're going in. You think you're cool. You think you're cool, and you're out in this new market. We're about 5 miles from our Midtown location, and we thought we were going to do this because there's so many. We were so off, And I think that to truly know what your sales number is going to be, it's going to take you anywhere from 3 to 5 years to truly know what that is, because you cannot forget that you got to work it, and you have to meet your customer. You have to know their mom's name. You got to know their kid's birthday. You got to do all that work, and do not assume that just because your store 15 miles away or in a different place, that you're just going to bring all those people and everyone's going to love you. So one thing that we definitely learned is you got to work it. And I'm going to leave it over to David to figure out how to get to the number, because I'm taking notes on this one too.
Yeah, David, I'll kind of augment that. You went through that, and you mentioned that you use the break-even analysis for your kind of at least top-line sales figures, and then know most of the cost down below there. You got the benefit of 5 other restaurants in the same concept. How close did you come to hitting those sales targets right out of the gate?
Well, the existing restaurants that we've had online, we come very close to our sales targets. There might be an outlier here or there, but we come very close. When our most recent restaurant that we opened had the highest traffic count. We're an out parcel of a major shopping center, including Walmart. Mm-hmm. We looked at it, they're like, you know what? This is going to be the busiest restaurant we got. This is going to be more than $1 million. We didn't budget for that, but we know, because our approach was, what's it going to take to break even? And what's different from us is that we buy our property as we go. So we're owner occupiers. So we've got to fit that into the financing. That's why I said earlier, I'm always on the hook for the bank. But got to do that. The only other thing that I would add for new people is, or for people considering it, it really sounds like a lot of work, but it's almost like putting on a major event. The first year you're budgeting, you're just getting used to the budget. You're really getting how things work. If you've got you'll come close if you've got a pretty good handle on your existing handle on all of your costs, and you know what they are. You've been reading your P&Ls. You'll get it. So I would recommend that. You just don't be afraid of just kind of jumping off the cliff on that one, and don't be afraid of being wrong. Look, we've been doing this budget through RSI. I've been doing budgets the last 30 years, but we've been doing budgets through RSI since 2013, and every year it gets better and better. And I think it gets better not only because we have all this information and we probably have a little bit more of an infrastructure, but it gets better because we're constantly talking about the existing P&Ls and costs with our management team, and our management team is highly engaged on that. This is the first year I said, I'll give you a break. we'll write the budget, and I'll do all the inputting this year.
Good, yeah, that's good.
I did the inputting. I had to enlarge the icons about 14 times because of my age.
I like your glasses.
But yeah, but it's if you've got everybody involved and it's got to be a tool and a resource. It cannot be a weapon.
That's good.
It just weapon. I've been involved in companies where it was a weapon, and it's the biggest turnoff. And so if there are owners doing it, shame on you for thinking on that, because that does not create any buy-in.
You got to end on that, 'cause it's really good.
That was exactly what I was going to do. I was going to call that David Miller's mic drop, and I'm going to pass this back over to Dan Jacobs to wrap up. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. What a great conversation. Michelle, I'm sorry your technical issues kept you from being a part of that. She was IMing in the background, so thanks for your help and being on it kind of vicariously through me. David and Ryan, thank you so much. Dan's going to recap, and then we will wrap this up for today. Thanks again, guys.
Thanks.
Gentlemen, that was dope. My God, my pen and pad couldn't keep up there for a minute, especially with the finale, David. Wow, cannot be a weapon. I think that's one of the things, right, that there's a fear sometimes with this process of budgeting that we're going to incorporate this corporate culture that squashes creativity in our restaurants. And quite honestly, what I heard out of both of you was it does just the opposite. The budget forces creativity. It forces, in California, it forces creativity to look at your business and go, all right, I'm going to have to change something here. I'm going to tweak this, that, and the other. I'm going to try new things. I might make a couple mistakes. I might drop an egg or two. But nevertheless, the process didn't defeat the purpose. So many of our clients, we use the analogy, they go to the beach and they lift up a rock and all that shit goes running, and that's what the budget feels like to them on day one. And so I appreciate that what you've brought to the conversation today is a face to that boogeyman, that it can be done, that it can be done with the help and effort, provided you care, right? Provided you put the work in, and you both have commented on that. And really, I love the other takeaways when we talk about incentives, and the statement was made, we compete for our employees as much as we're competing for guests. I think, David, you're like a plethora of one-liners that we're just going to plug in for every digital panel right now. But yeah, no, that was good stuff. And then ultimately, when you're going to tackle this thing, you guys touched on this in the beginning, you don't start in January. You start this living document and working through that document in Q3, Q4, and you keep that top of mind. You communicate that through the entire organization. And it doesn't mean that, a dishwasher is necessarily going to have to examine a P&L. It means that you're trying to explain to them what their impact of every decision is made, how it can impact the total machine, the entire team. I played basketball in junior high, so I totally picked up that analogy, Ryan, of 5 players working together. When that happens, you're a machine and you can't be stopped. So I think that's my March Madness tie-in as we're getting close. David Miller, Ryan, thank you again for all the time invested. I wish you the best, and look forward to doing this again sometime soon.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a great evening.